Morning, folks. Welcome back to Three Zen. Bobo here. So, in November 1981, the Aussies, the Americans, and the Kiwis held an exercise in Australia called Kangeroo 81. And there were elements from the U.S., F-15s from Kadena, and a contingent of United States Marines. The Aussies had everybody playing, Army, Navy, Air Force, whoever they had. And the Kiwis sent over their Air Force, and I think they might have had some elements of the Army, I'm not sure. Anyway, you get the picture. Really quite an exercise. I was tasked with being an observer from the Flight Safety Division at RAF, Royal Australian Air Force Headquarters. Now, you walk around with a clipboard dressed up in fancy dress, which is camouflage, and you just kind of observe that they're holding a safe war. Pretty tough to pull off. But anyway, we lived out in the bush in tents and so forth for a little while. And then I moved into Rockhampton to fly Mirages for a couple of days. And then I got a chance to fly with the Kiwi gunships. And that's where I'm going to start this part of the presentation. That was a lot of fun. They checked me out on a M60, and the Kiwis had brought over a ton of blank ammunition to expend. So they had all this ammunition, and they didn't want to take it back to New Zealand. I mean, what's the point in taking blank ammo back? Anyway, so we're over there and we're on UH-1s, and that was kind of fun. I'd flown on them a couple of times before, so I was comfortable flying in them, even as a door gunner. So anyway, we take off, and we start heading to the exercise area. The Marines had already landed. Now, this is kind of hilarious in and of itself. I'm not sure how they set up, but at any rate, I kind of got this envision from World War II movies of these mass Marine landings. So here they come toward the beach in all these landing craft, and they hit the beach, and instead of dropping the ramps and come charging out, what they do is they drive up on the beach, and they all make a right-hand turn. So they come in line abreast, hit the beach, and then they all make a right-hand turn. They're all in line. They drive down the beach a couple of yards, whatever it was, and they go through customs. The Australians had customs booths set up for them to go through. So they went through customs, and what they were looking for is crap on the bottom of their vehicles. They didn't want the Marines contaminating their land and so forth. But anyway, it just was kind of funny that, okay, we're going to have a war. You got to go through customs first, make sure you're all legal. Okay, fine. So they go through customs, and then they turn around, get everybody in line, and then they charge. That image has never left me. Okay. Now, part of the Kiwis' mission was to attack these Marines that had just gone through customs. Okay. So they're lined up. They had this ridge there, and a little bit inland, of course. They had this ridge, and so it was really fascinating to watch how they did this. So all the Kiwis are lined up. There were 3 helicopters, if I remember right. They were all lined up, and they were all 3 gunships. So they're all lined up just in the shadows, hovering close to this ridge. And then at a certain signal, they all come up and then turn, and over the ridge they go, coming down to attack the Marines. Great plan, except as they were just about to come up, this Mirage rolls in on them, had spotted them, rolls in on them, and guns all 3 of us. Well, that takes us out of the ball game. They called kills on us, and okay, crap. Now we can't attack anybody. We got all this M60 blank ammunition. Well, not to be deterred, they had this helicopter a couple days before, a day or two before, that had a mechanical issue and had set down on the road, and they were in the process of repairing it. So one of the pilots says, let's go brass up the Aussies sitting on the road. He says, great target and no air defense. So that's what we did. Flew over this thing and just hammered away with this M60. It was a hoot, especially when they can't shoot back. Anyway, that was a lot of fun, just coming in there, and so forth. Just a lot of fun. Then I ended up on one of those days, like I mentioned earlier, flying with a Mirage Squadron. And there was a guy there that I'd really befriended. I really enjoyed his company, Steve Lowe. He went by the call sign Slow. Steve Lowe. Okay, get it. Anyway, he was a good guy to fly with. And he was, at the time, he was also in safety. So he told me, we're going to go to the safety briefing here. The Mirages are going to fight the F-15s this afternoon or later this morning, whenever it was. And he says, I got a little surprise for you. Okay, so we went to listen to the safety briefing, make sure everything was kosher. What would I know? So I'm listening to all this, and they're talking this, all this stuff, and that's fine. So they get all briefed up, and out they go. Now Slow says, okay, here's where we're going to play the part. He said, we're going to take off on a duel in a dual airplane. Well, that's the only time I flew with them was in the dual ship. I never could solo in the Mirage. That wasn't part of the package. Okay. So we go out and hop in the dual and sit there while the F-15s and the Mirage players all departed. Now, I think the 15s had departed earlier. They had longer endurance than the Mirages did. So the F-15s take off and they're out on station somewhere or another, about 30 miles off the coast, somewhere out there. And then the Mirages take off and they were going to attack somebody. I don't know. Can't remember now. More prevision, please. Anyway, but what we did, they all took off and they turned to the north, okay, and then turned east out over the ocean. We took off and turned to the south, staying low initially, and then we climbed up above 40,000, 42, 43,000, somewhere up there. And then we went down, you could see Sydney from where we were. It was really kind of neat. And then we made a left-hand 180 turn and hooked into the fight, started downhill. We could hear the fight going on. We were on the same frequency, and we'd picked that up in the briefing. And so what Steve's plan was to come in and bag a couple F-15s. And, well, that's going to be interesting. So anyway, we're coming downhill, and we're going Mach 2 point whatever, 2.1, 2.2, so whatever it was, coming downhill. And he's sitting there racking this thing up, coming downhill. He said, where are you Yankee pooftas? You know, and now poofter is an Australian word. It's not a really endearing word. Actually, it might be Brit. Ya poofta, you bloody poofta. So anyway, he's sitting there ragging on this, and it means kind of like gay, you know. Okay, fine. So he's sitting there going, oh, where are you Yankee poofta? I know you're out there somewhere. Well, I just happened to spot one, an F-15. And I said to Slow, I said, hey, Slow, I said, if you stop ragging on my countrymen, I might point them out to you. And he froze for me. All right, where is? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend the guy. Okay, fine, right 1 o'clock. So he spots the guy, rolls in on him, hammers him, and then pulls off, calls him a mort, and then pulls off, and we come back and land. We're out of gas. We land back at Rockhampton. That was a .6 mission. Then in a debrief, we're sitting there going through the debrief, and there was this young captain, F-15 guy, Josh pissed off. Josh, absolutely pissed off. That wasn't fair. I got hammered by yada, yada, yada. And I was kind of embarrassed because this captain's ragging on it, just in general, if you will. And he really made a horse's ass out of himself. And so finally I saddled up to him a little bit and I said, hey, come here, Captain. I said, you know what? You're down here as a guest flying. And I said, should be a lot of fun. Yeah, we're down here to learn things and whatever. I said, and he did get on you. He did get a kill. But I said, realize they're flying 1959 technology and you're in the neatest and slickest thing America has to offer. And I said, why don't you just show a little bit of grace, for crying out loud? We're all going to go over to a club and drink beer. I mean, you got to admit, that was kind of a good one. And I said, and besides, if you ever have to fight the Chinese, they're not going to cheat. They're going to be up and up, aren't they? And he kind of looked at me, and I know he wanted to get nasty with me, but because that major's rank, he just kind of had to hold back a little bit. And we went over to the club, and by the end of the evening, he was fine. He was okay. Okay, be that as it may. I want to tell you a little bit about a guy. When the F-15s came in, there was a guy there named Dave Deptula. Now, I had seen Dave at Vance Air Force Base a couple years earlier. He was the first student at Vance that we had that got an F-15. Dave was not in my flight. He was in L flight. But, you know, when you're an instructor in UPT, when I was an instructor in UPT, walking through the halls, I could sense some of the guys who were going to go somewhere. And Dave was one of those guys. He had a sense about him, and I could feel it. At any rate, I saw him. I went up and introduced myself. He says, yeah, I remember you vaguely. And so we got to chatting a little bit. And I said, do you mind if I have a look around in the cockpit? No. He said, go ahead, climb on up there, have a seat. So I climbed up in this F-15. I'd never been in one before. I'd seen them, but I'd never been in one. Sat down, and the first thing that struck me was how huge that thing was compared to a 38 or a Mirage. A Mirage, you almost had to use a shoehorn to get in it. And then it had that Martin Baker seat, and it took about 20 minutes to strap in that damn thing, or so it seemed. Okay. Anyway, I climb up in Dave's airplane. First thing I noticed when I looked around was, like I said, the size of it. The next thing I looked around was he had a box lunch sitting over there. So, what the hell does he have lunch? So I opened it up and a couple pieces of chicken. Hey, Dave, I said, you mind if I have a piece of chicken? He says, no, go for it. So I had a piece of chicken. It was good. At any rate, it's another story for another day, but I followed Dave through his career. What a great guy he is. And America was and is very lucky to have him. I'll tell you a little bit more about my affiliation with Dave here in a presentation down the line here. At any rate, that was Kangeroo 81. I'm trying to sit here and think if there's anything else remarkable on that mission. There was a helicopter that, an Australian helicopter that crashed. There was a fatality in it, which was kind of sad. It just was sad. We kind of put a damper on the whole exercise. But all in all, what a fun time that was. And I don't mean to make light of it. I hate to see that, as we all do. But be that as it may, that was my experience with Kangeroo 81. I hate ending a presentation like this on a sad note. It always has troubled me when we've had a loss of airmen like this. But be that as it may, I'll just leave it here. This is Bobo Base Gear. Stop.